Welcome to Mission Majjhima, Ajahn.
Ajahn.
So tell us about the Cūḻahatthipadopama Sutta, Majjhima 27.
So the shorter discourse on the elephant's footprint begins with a Brahmin named Janusoni in Savatthi encountering a wanderer named Pilotika. And he learns that Pilotika just came from visiting the Buddha and asks his opinion of the Blessed One. And Pilotika basically just displays immense faith in the Buddha, saying, who am I to praise such a being? Janusoni is impressed and wishes that he too would get to see the Buddha, and so visits. But before that, he asks Pilotika why he has such faith, and Pilotika gives a simile. He says, just as a woodsman would see the footprint of an elephant and know this is a bull elephant, even so he saw 4 footprints of the Tathagata, namely his ability to convert even those who are intent on converting him, and that being, other householders, Brahmins intent on debating or ascetics, etc. When Janusoni approaches the Buddha and tells him about this exchange, the Buddha says that this analogy, this simile, was not completed in detail, and then goes on to talk about the true footprints of the Tathagata, of the Buddha, and basically displays this amazing epistemological humility where he says, you can't assume just from the world's approval or from a speaker's ability to convert others that this is authentically, the Blessed One, that this teaching is true. Rather, you need to move through this experience of awakening yourself. And then he goes on to move through what we call the gradual training. And it's a sequence that appears very often in the suttas, moving through purity of virtue, purifying one's conduct of body, speech, mind, and livelihood. So that's the aggregate of sila, virtue. And then moving on to cultivating of mindfulness and of sense restraint of the jhanas. And this is the aggregate of samadhi. And then moving on to the insight with those deep states of concentration into the ending of the asava, of the effluence of ignorance, full awakening, and that's panya, wisdom. Honestly, a lot of the beauty of the sutta is just in the details of purity of speech, of purity of livelihood, etc. But as the Buddha is talking about this path of practice, the footprints of the Tathagata don't appear until the first jhana. And he talks about finally when one achieves this state of deep meditative concentration, that is a first footprint of the Tathagata, really singling out these supernormal states as a factor of the Noble Eightfold Path as key. He really singles those out, but says that even that first, second, third, fourth jhana and up through the formless attainments aren't enough to conclude this is truly a bull elephant, because often there's footprints that look similar but aren't truly of a bull elephant in this simile. Only when one achieves complete awakening does one know this truly is enlightenment, this truly is the teaching, and has unshakable faith. Really, I think we can take for granted the beauty of that epistemological humility, as you put it earlier in Mission Majjhima, of a teacher not saying, yes, I'm correct, absolutely, but saying, be careful where you put your faith. And experientially, this is the only way to truly know this is verified. Ajahn, what would you draw out of this sutta, or what do you find interesting?
Yeah, I really appreciate your highlighting the gradual training, because you can't really get around it in this sutta. We'll mention a book just called, I think it's called Gradual Training, or The Gradual Training by Lee Brasington, where he systematically has got a chart of all the different suttas, and there are many in the Digha and the Majjhima and the Anguttara, these different sutta discourse anthologies, where the Buddha gives different versions of the graduated training, the Anupubisika. And it's just useful to know that theravada is a gradual path, the way that it's usually taught. There are aspects of sudden awakening. Awakening is sudden. One simile that's given is like the shore, the continental shelf off of a continent. It just goes gradual, and then deep drop off. There's this sudden sudden drop. Other traditions often talk about sudden awakening in other ways, and you can, conceive of it as when you see mind as mind, that is kind of a one way of suddenly recognizing the way things are on a provincial level. But one thing I really like about this sutta, this gradual training, is that he stops and highlights along the way different types of sukha that one experiences, and one can experience and know the path as a path of increasing skill and refinement in happiness and pleasure. When he describes the path of virtue or sila, when one has this noble aggregate of virtue, then one experiences a bliss which is blameless, an anavajja sukha, a happiness which people can't fault and you don't fault yourself. And that's just a mark along the path. You look at your path and I didn't do anything that I regret today. This is one of the 10 subjects for frequent recollection. You look at your own, is there anything that I could fault myself with, or could my companions in the holy life fault me for this? And then when it comes to sense restraint, not looking at certain things in a way which would give rise to greed, anger, delusion, not listening to things in a way which would give rise to greed and anger, delusion, etc. with the other senses. So with sense restraint, you experience a unsullied happiness. And then when it comes to the level of samadhi, you experience the piti and sukha, the joy, the rapture, the pleasure, the bliss of these different levels of jhana, of absorption. So a beautiful graduated training, very doable. So,
Well, thank you.
anything that you'd like to draw out or feel it's especially practicable in the sutta?
I think the real the real power of the sutta lies in just, honestly, at least largely in the phrasing of the gradual training. The just way the Buddha speaks, for example, on speech. Abandoning false speech, he abstains from false speech. He speaks truth, adheres to truth, is trustworthy and reliable, one who is no deceiver of the world. Abandoning malicious speech, he abstains from malicious speech. He does not repeat elsewhere what he has heard here in order to divide those people from these, nor does he repeat to these people what he has heard elsewhere in order to divide these people from those. Thus he is one who reunites those who are divided, a promoter of friendships, who enjoys concord, rejoices in concord, delights in concord, a speaker of words that promote concord. And he goes on about speaking gently, words that are pleasing to hear, and reasonable, moderate, beneficial, bagel, as you put in a previous kind of mnemonic device or mnemonic device. And just, there's so many other paragraphs in the sutta with the gradual training that are just beautiful in and of themselves, and which could be reflected on so many times throughout a life, in which we chant many of these things. So honestly, I just think that's worth singling out. And there's a reason that the gradual training occurs so many times throughout the canon. It's profound. What about you, Ajahn? Anything else?
Yeah, one way that this gradual training starts, as it does in other suttas, is the going forth. And there's a line in here which we actually take and use in the ordination ceremony at Abhayagiri and other Western monasteries, is that household life is cramped and dusty. The homeless life is free as air. It is not easy living the home life, to live the purified, holy life, purified and polished like a conch shell. What if I were to shave off my hair and beard and go forth as a Buddhist monastic? So much of the way that we live in monasteries, and that when people come and visit monasteries, what we chant are taken from suttas. And although our buildings are using different, more modern materials, so much of our life really does harken back to and just modeled after these early discourses. And people, when they come visit a monastery, can come experience that to some extent. And everyone can model their own lives after these early, they're early ideals, but they're universal ideals, like the way of skillful speech that you outlined. I mean, the more you can do that, the more you're living as if you were in the presence of the Buddha and practicing his teaching. So I just love the practicality and timelessness of that.
Thank you, Ajahn. And I feel like living with you is not dusty at all and very polished and clean.
I appreciate that.
And our word of the week is anavacha sukha. And anavacha means blameless, from the root vad, or to praise. So,
all right.